Okay, we'll call the meeting to order at 5 o'clock. Start with 2.1, adoption of the agenda. Check with administration if we have anything to add. Nothing to add. Council, if I can get a motion to adopt the agenda. Councilor Wilhelm.
A motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
Thank you, Councilor. With that, I'll call the question. All in favor? That, and we just get down 3.1, adoption of the minutes from our April 17th minute. It's been a while since we've had one. But are there anything in there anybody notices or needs to discuss? Councilor Dean?
Seeing none, I move that council adopts the minutes from the Governance and Priorities Committee meeting of April 17th,
Okay, thank you.
2024.
With that, I'll call the question. All in favor? That's carried. And just checking, Councilor Burrows, you need a minute to get set up? Okay, we'll start with 6.1, draft policy 4301, operation of transfer stations. How's it going, Steve?
Not bad, yourself?
Oh, not so bad.
Good evening. Policy 4301 for the transfer sites. It was effective back in January 1994. It's had one update since back in May 19th, 2009. And it was requested for February 21st GMP meeting that we bring back the policy and add in take it or leave it into the policy. The background of doing this policy, we went to our transfer site operators and asked any feedback that they had for updating this policy, other than just adding the take it or leave it to the policy. One of the biggest things that they came back was kind of changing the hours and the days of operations of our transfer sites. The way the existing is right now, they do not have 2 days in a row off. So they work Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays, and Sundays. So what we're looking at doing is taking Thursday, which is for all 3 sites, it's their slowest day, and moving that one to a Wednesday. And then that would give them the Thursday and Friday off. And I think that is very important, both for the 3 individuals that we have right now, but in the future when we look to hire someone, it makes it a lot more of an opening or more pleasant job to take. I mean, they work weekends, which is never a good thing. And then we also, if you look at the policy, we've also looking at changing the hours of operations, because right now it's summertime, it's from noon till 6, and in the winter times we've got it from 11 till 5. And we're looking at changing it from a 10 to 4, which covers, with consultation with our operators, it covers the vast majority of everybody that goes to our transfer sites. So that way then it's a strict time. We don't have to change our hours of operations. So it just makes things a little bit easier and keeping things consistent as well. The other stuff is a lot the same. We have designated areas for our tires, metal, waste, used oil, e-waste. We've also added under section 2.3 the take it or leave it, and under 231's prohibited items, which is, I did some research with a lot of other municipalities that still offer this service, and it's pretty much a consistent list throughout. I'll have to remove the word no because it says prohibited items above that, so there's no point in having no when it's already above it. And we have stuff that's placed in the metals. We're looking at getting signs and stuff put up that if the items that are placed throughout the site that are not in the take it or leave it, try to reduce on some of the salvaging that's being done out there, and that maybe reduce some of the people that try to go in after ours. And then it gives the site attendants, kind of directs them what they need to do and how they need to, for the 35 days there for stuff that, once it's in the take it or leave it shop for a period of time, and if it's not gone, then they get to dispose of it. And then it also talks about the responsibilities as well, that we're not responsible of the items that are in the take it or leave it. Because that's some of the issues of some of the items that we've prohibited is items that could be liable, or let the county be liable for those items.
I'll hold you for a second there, Steve. Councillor Dean?
Thanks through the chair to Steve. The, can you give me a sense for how big of an area this is, that the take it or leave it area?
It's kind of a off the ground lean-to area that's probably,
It's about 30 by 20.
Oh, it's that big.
It's a good sized
Sure.
building
Okay,
or lean-to.
so on all three sites, it's.
At all three sites, they're all the same.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, thank you.
and then the last part of the policy, just for the transfer site ID cards that we've, that's what we brought back into effect back in 2009. Anybody have any questions?
Anything else? Councillor Dean?
Just one more concerning hours of operation, and I respect the fact that you've talked to the operators who would have firsthand knowledge, but is there any call for, like the after-work crowd? You get home at 5 and you got an hour to go to you used to have an hour to go to the transfer station. Is that going to be an issue at all, do you think?
They don't have it in the wintertime. In the wintertime, we switch it from 11 to 5, so they don't foresee it, because usually that's their slower time of the day.
Sure.
There's only a few people that actually want to hop in their truck and after a day and run out to the Lansville.
Okay. Okay, yeah, that's good.
Any other questions, comments, concerns? Councillor Coolman?
Yeah, through the chair. I think the 10 to 4 is great, because there's so many, I've had so many comments on people, waiting till noon to take their garbage is just not palatable. So I think that's going to be well supported.
And it's part of the reason why I put it to 10, which is earlier than normal, but a lot of people, that gives them the ability to get their day going and be able to get to the transfer site, plus have plenty of time to do other things.
And I do like the idea of giving the option of a couple days off in a row for the staff that are out there. Everybody needs that, so.
Yeah, well, I think it's great.
Any other questions, comments, concerns? Not seeing any. Does anyone want to move? Councillor Coolman?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that the Governance Priorities Committee forwards the draft policy 4301, operation of transfer stations, to council for consideration.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Wilhelm?
Quick question, do we have to say as amended because we already noticed an error in the writing?
We should put as amended, because there is an error taken in the law.
Friendly amendment,
Okay.
fair enough.
On the amendment, any discussion else to the motion? Not seeing any. I'll call the question. All in favor? That one's moved. Thank you very much. Brings us down to asset management culvert replacement, 7.1.
I'm just gonna, well,
For sure.
hand out, because I know the first question that's gonna come up.
How are you doing, Kara? Whenever you're ready.
Yeah, Your Worship, members of council, so administration is here to present the culvert replacement and maintenance 5-year program. And this is the start of us rolling out all the asset classes. This one is the one that we have the most data on, so we're doing that now. We have a whole bunch of data coming in with building condition assessments. We started working on the sanitary means with our wastewater crew and Jeff the other day. We have other reports coming in. Bridges are coming in also. And what else am I missing?
There's a few.
There's a few, yeah, and I didn't realize that there's an outlined list here for what you guys are going to be seeing. I need to So we wanted to start with just giving you guys an overall process for the asset management. So collecting the basic inventory, so we have all of the location size, length, diameter done for all of the culverts. And then once the basic data is collected, we move into the advanced data, which is the condition data has been done for the culverts. We have not done level of service and risk. They've been started, but they're not finished. So you'll be seeing those in the future. We're gonna continue, we've developed condition criteria for the culverts, and I'll show you an example of that to ensure that anyone that goes out there and does the data collection is the next person would do it the exact same way. So then we can have multiple people out there collecting the data and as well as things are maintained, add that data back in. So continued data collection. We haven't done that in the past. So a lot of this has been building our inventory for the first time, and then we have things in place now to make sure that that is going to continue on. So the culverts should be done on, we're proposing a 5-year program, so 20% of the culverts will be re-inspected each year, rather than waiting until the end and doing all of them. We also reviewed the condition data to determine the maintenance and replacement requirements. This was a paper exercise that we sat down with Jeff and did. Then we assigned costs to the maintenance and replacement requirements. Developed budget scenarios, so there's an unrestricted plan that we'll show you, and then a restricted plan, then the overall budget compilation when we look at all the other asset classes and other programs that we're proposing, and prioritization of those programs, and then there'll be the budget deliberations and of course council's approval. So how many culverts do we have? So in July of 2021 was when we first started with the asset management, and in there was just over 1,500 culverts, and that came from 2012 data. Some of you might remember what we hired Catalyst, I believe it was a van, they drove around and they collected, we have video data of our roads, and then they also collected all the sign data, pictures of our buildings, and that's kind of what we started with, and they did some culvert identification. Not the greatest, because it was a van driving around, but so that's where that came from. But from that point afterwards, none of that information when we replaced the culverts and whatnot, or signs or anything, was being put into the system. So that's why we have had so much backlog to get everything back up to being current to what's in the field. And then November was when you guys saw the first asset management plan that came through, and we had about 2,600 culverts identified at that time. And inventory was then collected again the following summer in 2023. So as of right now, we have just over 3,500 culverts. So Lance worked on data collection for the summers of 2022 and 2023.
Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead, Bruce.
Through the chair to Kara, out of that 3,500 culverts, do we know which ones need repair yet, or
Yes. Yep, you betcha.
what kind of numbers there?
So about 20% of them are falling into the poor and critical, which is about 648 culverts. Yeah. I think it's like 18%.
Yes, that happens when you have way more culverts than you usually have in the books.
Yeah. I don't know how well you can see this, but maybe you can see it on your sheets also, but we have the condition rating system is a 1 to 5 scale, and this is across all of our assets. So with the condition 1 being excellent and brand new, and then the ones we're focusing on are 4 and 5, the poor and the critical. So these ones are at risk of failing to provide the service that's intended, or they're already failing. And then this is an example of the actual criteria. So we were looking at the inlet, the outlet, the barrel, the road surface, everything to come up with a 1 to 5 condition. And only one item needs to have a 5, like a critical, to make it critical overall. So we take the worst case scenario. So some of these are obviously easier to fix than others. So if we have an inlet or an outlet, to get to number 5, we said if it was 60% obstructed, that's at risk of performing the desired service. That might be something where a field crew can go out and easily fix with a piece of equipment, or even by hand potentially. We'll show you some other pictures, but then you might get a 5 that is where the barrel is misaligned, and that is a full replacement of the culvert likely. It's not like something that's easy to fix. So just giving you an example of the criteria. So we've tried to make it very simple. So hopefully whoever goes and collects the data will be able to collect it the same way for consistency. And then this chart just shows the condition overall of our assets. So I had mentioned 648 are the poor and critical. We have a few in excellent, but those ones are pretty much brand new ones. And then the good and fair. So showing that we have almost 20% in the critical poor is definitely suggesting a bit of an infrastructure deficit. And then these culvert issues impact the ditches, how they're functioning, and then again, our roads. So hopefully if we can fix some of these, we'll see a increase in our roads performing. And so what are we seeing in the field? So these are some of the pictures that we took out of the data. So also when the data is collected, they're taking a picture of the inlet, outlet, and the overall road. So we have that for on record. And then the data collectors doing the condition assessments are taking pictures of some of the issues they're finding. So here there's heavy vegetation. So a lot of them are like the top right corner there is, it's grassed over with some heavy grass and gravel on top. The bottom one, there is a culvert in there, but you can barely see it. So just, they need some attention to clean them up. Lots of damaged culvert ends. That culvert on the top, like that's the same culvert, so both ends are crushed. So they're showing up as critical.
Sorry, Jeremy?
Through the chair to administration. So in this kind of case, is that a full replacement that's required, or can that be rehabilitated, that culvert?
Through the chair to Councillor Wilhelm, if it's only one end that's damaged, we'd probably be better off just replace that one end without replacing the whole structure.
I don't know anything about culverts, so that's my.
Right, that statement is more general, because if you have a culvert that's already 45 years old and you see other defects that into the fair condition, you may have equipment out there to replace the whole thing. So, but that's more on the more extreme side.
One quick follow-up question.
Follow up, Councillor Preston.
What's a typical life cycle on a culvert without any extraneous issues happening to it?
We use 50 years.
So, Chair to Councillor Wilhelm, new culverts when they're installed properly and designed properly, 50 years would be the number. I would not want to promise you that 50 years was the lifespan when these culverts were first put in. We sometimes see culverts only last 30. So,
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Prestige?
Through the chair to administration and council. Some of these older culverts are done in the imperial inches, sort of thing, or 16-inch culvert or whatever. The new culverts are metric, and the new culverts don't line up. So if you're gonna change half a culvert, they don't match.
Okay.
So you're pretty much doing the whole culvert. And the other thing is, with the ends pounded in, would it be wise to get those markers that bolt onto the top of the culvert so people can see them, so they don't, because we have that issue with the Moore hitting that brand new one this summer. Might be something to look at.
Councillor Dean?
Just to clarify that, Bruce, that's those, they kind of on a spring, they stick up and
Well, they're
you
just a
don't.
plastic tube, fluorescent orange plastic
Oh, okay,
tube.
all right.
2-inch tube.
Councillor Burrows?
Thanks through the chair. I just have a question. I'm a little, when we were talking about development guidelines and some of these other things, we were talking about the culverts had to be one piece when they were installed in new developments. So do we do one piece, or, and I don't have a policy in front of me, and I don't have anyone from development to ask the question to, but I remember talking with a developer, and he said that, they're requiring us to put these in one piece so that they don't disconnect in the middle when they're tied under the road anymore. If there's any movement, they'll pop apart, and that happened in a couple of spots where it just blew half the road out, and you end up having to replace the whole thing. But so I guess I'm just curious, do we have anything where it's one piece, or is there anything on that?
Go ahead, Jeff.
Through the chair to Councillor Burrows, I am not aware of that requirement at all. Culverts are, the CSP culverts, the coming sections, the 6 to 8 meter long sections, are coming and you put a coupler to couple them together. And the coupler is supposed to make it watertight, so they don't leak, and it does allow a little bit of movement. The welded steel pipes, in the case you have to install them trenchlessly, you weld them together in one piece. I am not aware of any culverts that's coming with one single piece and can be installed.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Prestige?
Yes, through the chair, to administration and council. It used to be with culverts, you'd have a coupler that was only about a foot long. Now they're like 2 feet long. And there's like 6 bolts or 8 bolts holding together to crimp them, so it's pretty hard for the new couplers to come apart. The old ones didn't take much because there was only 6 inches on the culvert.
Okay. Anything else? No? You want to keep going, Karen?
We could, through the chair to Councillor Burrows, we could look in the design guidelines and see if there's something in there. And get back to you if there is regarding that. I'm not familiar with the guidelines off the top of my head, but
Yeah,
Good
without
luck for you
going
if you
too
want.
deep into it, I remember one of the guys, because in the end, you end up with a couple of pieces you could couple together, like a couple shorter pieces you could couple, and they said that wasn't acceptable anymore, so I just wanted to know.
And
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Prestige.
yeah, they don't cut them and use them because they're spiraled.
Hmm?
So when you join 2 culverts, the ends are, they redo them so that the rings are all the way around instead of on an angle.
Mhm.
So that when you put the coupler on it, they have kind of bumps on them that grab in the pieces there.
Yeah, it's like corrugated.
Yeah,
Yeah.
where if you cut it, you're on the spiral
Mm.
and the coupler won't hold.
Just trying to figure out what I heard, that's all.
All right.
okay. I'll keep moving along with the slides. So the next one is just obstructed ends, so some of them are completely grassed over or filled in with gravel. And here we have some damaged ends and vegetation.
Somebody join.
That was just me. Then our next slide just shows the location of the critical and poor, so there isn't one particular area, we have them everywhere. So there's no one trend. So then for the 5-year replacement and maintenance plan, we made some assumptions. So focusing on the culverts, the poor and critical condition first. We use the field collected condition data to determine which culverts require maintenance and which culverts require replacement. And then to that, the replacement, we're including either a partial or a full. Might not be able to determine that until we're in the field. Assuming replacing all the critical ones in 2025, and then all the poor replacements and critical maintenance in 2025, and then 2026, and the next 3 years just doing the poor maintenance. And so those numbers look like this as an unrestricted. So you're looking at just over 1.2 million for 2025, 1.3 million for 26, and then just over 350 for the remaining years if we did it as a unrestricted. So that was one option to run.
Sorry, Peter had a question there?
Yeah, through the chair to Kira. When they did these inspections, like a lot of the culverts that I've seen have sod or a mulch that grows up in them. So would that be in the maintenance piece, or is that a separate?
That would be in maintenance,
That would be a maintenance piece.
yes.
Okay.
Is that right, Jim? It's maintenance? 'Cause
Through the chair to Councillor Cookin, that would be true if the blockage is the only trigger for the
Okay.
poor or critical.
Okay.
If the culvert has multiple, then we have to go to the worst. What's the
Okay.
most
Yeah,
critical?
that's fair. Yep.
Councillor Prestige?
Through the chair, to administration and council. I've seen some of the culverts, there's one over by, what's that subdivision that we had all the trouble with. Our crews went in and the ditch is full of sod and the didn't clean the ditch out. And they put a brand new culvert in, level with the sod, which made the culvert only that much lower than the road. So I think that's something we have to really look at, is whether we have to clean the ditch out first before we change the culvert to get the water flow.
Jeff, go ahead.
Through the chair to Councillor Prestige, one of the later program that we going to run through this process on is ditching program. So eventually these all kind of tie together at a time of budget.
Yeah. Well, what I'm getting at is, we have to put the culvert in at the right height. That doesn't mean the ditch is the right height.
Right. Through the chair to Councillor Prestige, next year when we do work, we will try to program the ditching and culvert together so they get addressed together.
Thank you.
So that side is the unrestricted, and then we also did a restricted budget where we were doing the same amount. Each year it was about $730,000. And right now in the budget for 2024, it was $275,000 for culvert maintenance. So that's like about $450,000 more each year than what we're currently budgeting to get all the poor and critical culverts cleaned up. Yeah, we did a lot of this manually, so we're hoping with the new system that we have, it will be able to spit out different scenarios for us instead of us working with some spreadsheets and putting costs in, so.
Right, Councillor Wilhelm to the question, and Councillor Culvert.
Wasn't a question, more of a comment, just through the chair to administration. I really appreciate this. This is one of the first times when we've had like the start of a piece of the puzzle of the maintenance going to be required for infrastructure, and I'm excited to see the rest of the programs and how they can lay out, and then also what our budget implications are going to be. So I thank you guys for the hard work on doing it, because it's really appreciated.
Councillor Culvert.
Yeah, through the chair to both Jeff and Kara. I'm assuming that now that we have a number of culverts, we know what size they are. There's a possibility that they're not sized properly, given that they've been put in 25 or 30 years ago, and maybe the amount of road that's been attached is more now that it has to drain. But when now that you know these culverts, is there a savings for the municipality by knowing and being able to pre-purchase some culverts when there's a deal on them, or when you know, I don't know enough about it, but obviously with the amount of culverts we've got, there should be a kind of a volume discount or something.
Through the chair to Councillor Kukan, we actually found our culvert purchases cheaper just due to our locality. We're very close to the plant in Westlock.
Okay, yeah.
We actually get better pricing than what other municipality can get from Canoe, from RMA. So there is definitely volume discount you save on the trucking. I mean, if you can't get a truckload, you're wasting some money there. I will just say that our staff, they don't order one section at a time. When they order, they make sure it's a full truckload. How much more beyond that? I think the value of saving diminishes.
Okay.
If you get yourself a truckload, I think that's a good starting point.
Yeah. Any other questions, comments?
I just got one quick question. Sorry, through the chair to Kara. When we got a report from the company that was doing the asset management, and I can't remember the name of the fellow, he gave us and I like the big numbers because I like to be able to talk to people about the big numbers. And I think he said it was 28 million in culverts if we were to have to, because sometimes we say, well, if we had to replace every bridge in the municipality, it'd be X amount of dollars. So today, given that back then it looks like we found another, what, 500 culverts in that period of time. So if we had to replace do you know if we had to replace every culvert?
I don't have them with me now, but out of the system, we could get that.
I'm just
Like,
curious
there's a
because.
replacement cost that's associated with each of them.
Right, and it goes up every year, but I just, but it was 20-something million at the time, wasn't it, under the report?
Give her a second to get back and roll.
It's not, if you don't have it, don't worry about it, I just,
It was 12 million for a replacement cost for the storm sewer culverts. Yeah, so just over 12 million.
okay,
But you're right, that was based on the 2,500, not the 26, or 36.
36.
yeah.
And
Yeah, 26 to 35, yeah. so
2019 costs? Or when was that?
2022 costs,
Versus 2025, which have,
it's like
Right.
900, yeah, like, so there's,
Councillor Dean, sorry.
Yeah, just from a rough numbers point of view, 20% equates to about 3.5 million.
Mhm.
So the other 80%, you know, is gonna come up with roughly 4 times that much, so.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a big number is I guess just what I'm getting at, that's all.
The plus side of having older roadways and crossings. Councillor Wilhelm and Councillor Cooley, do you have a question or two?
Through the chair to administration, so then with regards to looking at the couple options, would then the outcome of a potential 5-year plan, depending on how we lay it out, we would look to then, the budgeting for this program would then significantly drop off because the majority of our critical and poor would be gone. And once they're not into the critical portion, they're probably significantly less expensive to repair or replace, I would imagine. So are we looking at just some like future casting 5 years past, whatever decision is, we're not looking at needing to budget for the next 35 years, 700K a year. We're just looking at a 5-year plan to get us out of the critical zone, and then we should see a significant drop off in that required budgeting.
yeah, through the chair to Councillor Wilhelm, there's quite a few in the good is over, like, I think it's like 1,900, and then the fair, there is, yeah, like 20% is in the poor critical, but the other 80% should last. I don't know how long we would put fair, like another 20 years on a fair, I don't know what a fair, like, what a value would be, but.
Through the chair to Councillor Wilhelm, the 5-year program that we're proposing here is focused on reducing the backlog. After the period of 5 years, you still need to have an annual budget to deal with what the condition at that time, but it will be, it is our anticipation it will be back to a more normal number after 5 years.
Similar to what we're budgeting now, 7 years.
Plus inflationary pressures and
Thank you. Councillor Coogan?
This question is like a long-term kind of a strategy. I think that even though you put a new culvert in, I think it's imperative that we understand that life cycle is there. And I would really like to see us develop a budget that allows us to put a reserve in for culverts in the future at some point in time. I don't think that's something that we may want to do today, but I really believe that if we're going to have a true asset management strategy, it has to include the life cycle. And we need to budget every year to replace some portion of what we put in new. And also I would suggest that we have a look at the good to fair and identify what we would need to put aside to address those when they cycle out.
Jeff, go ahead.
through the chair to Councillor Coogan, those are great long-term goals. This presentation, this is our first kick at the can and try to use asset management and try to develop budget. This is probably, it's a starting point. We know there's gaps. We don't have a software system that can do the business analytics side of things for us. That's 2 years later. But we have to start somewhere before we worry about perfection. But certainly, I agree with your comment for the future.
Any other questions, comments? Councillor Wilhelm?
there's no more, I'll motion that the governance and priorities committee accept the asset management culvert replacement and maintenance 2025 to 2029 report for information.
Thank you very much, Councillor. With that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Yeah, thank you very much. That's,
Thank
In
you.
favor?
oh, we got Councillor, is that
Councillor
Devin's
Williams, yeah.
Williams online?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks,
Councillor
Graham.
Williams is joining us virtually.
I forgive you for.
We got him,
What is that?
just making sure we noted when he showed up in the. Great, thank you. Move to 7.2 Canoe procurement utilization. Denisha.
Thank you, Mr. Reeves, and good night. So this motion, not motion here, but RFD is coming back to council in response to Council Burrow's request to meet with Canoe and understand their purchasing program that they have and how the county could benefit from it. So we met with Canoe and both myself and Jeff was there and Corinne was there. So a number of us from our administration team was there. And we discussed the program and I've put some information in the RFD here that explains what the program is and just gain a greater understanding on how we can use the program. So also in the RFD, I've highlighted some of the areas where currently we are using the program. And since we met with them, we have been more cognizant of what programs they have available and where we may be able to use them when we're purchasing. And again, we're not looking to use them as a one-all stop, like as Jeff recently shared in a few minutes ago. Wherever we find that it is more effective or efficient for the county to buy, like the culverts, we're right near a supplier, we are using those resources. So we certainly will be looking to use a program where we can leverage that cost and also leverage that additional resources. So for example, we could use a program for some of the major tenders that we may be going out and do instead of the administrative workload to manage those tenders. We know they have gone out and have done those major tenders and have vetted a number of suppliers. And so we will be using those where it's feasible. So it is a large program and certainly they have buying power that we as a county don't have. And we will also be updating our purchasing policy in the future just to make the language more clear that we can certainly use their services when where it's effective for the county.
Hey, any questions, comments? Councillor Burrows?
Yeah, sorry, through the chair, and that was really my question more on the purchasing policy that we have. So under the current purchasing policy, goods and services, $7,500 up to $50,000, we require 3 quotes. So, you know, if we don't update the procurement policy, then we're stuck with these 3 quotes systems. And the other thing with the procurement policy is, so we saw this when we were dealing with the graders and some of the equipment. So, you know, my background is in fleet management and maintenance, and I would love to have 3 pieces of equipment that all use the same filters and all the same engines and all the same, like, some commonality amongst the fleet. I do not want to go out and say, oh, maybe I'll buy a Deere and then have to, a John Deere, and then, you know, kind of use this point system where I say, well, I'm actually not going to get a Deere, I'm going to get a Cat instead. And the amount of administrative time that goes into that, plus, you know, council doesn't quite understand that process, as well as on the equipment side, I think Canoe has 160 build spots reserved with CAT.
Right.
So you order a piece of equipment through CAT, it's there in months, like a month or 2. And we're still waiting for some of our equipment that came through Finning at the same price. So I guess what I'm seeing in the policy is it's all dollar driven in the policy for the 3 quotes.
Right.
And I'm wondering if it might be more effective if we split if we tried to look at the procurement policy or purchasing policy as splitting it up into buying things versus dollar amounts and projects.
Okay.
So, you know, one is equipment and office furniture and like tangible items, and the other one is projects. And then the projects end up coming to council, and we get to spend some time evaluating the projects. You get to spend a little more administrative time looking at kind of the more important end of the projects rather than taking up time administratively at the council table, you know, debating about whether to buy a green one or a red one or you know what I mean? So that was really what I was kind of driving at with this was our procurement policy, the way it stands right now, it locks us into that 3-quote system still if we're following the policy, even if we are using Canoe. And you know, obviously Canoe's not going to be the most cost effective on everything, but the procurement policy just, it still binds us into that 3-quote, which is a lot of administrative time for, I mean, $7,500 to $50,000. Those were probably written, well, I think this policy is 2018. And, you know, the cost of things have gone up significantly. So it kind of ties our hands. So this was more about the purchasing policy and having a discussion around the purchasing policy and how we can add Canoe into that to alleviate some of the administrative time more than anything, if that makes sense.
Through the chair to Council Burrows. So certainly we can look into that, and if I'm also understanding what you're saying, you're looking for the municipality to look at somewhat standardizing their, you could say their fleet or the things that we're using so that we're not having like multiple equipments or multiple suppliers for use. So if we're having some sort of a, for example, like computers, where we have maybe we're all just using all Dell computers and not many different supplier computers.
Yeah, and if I, like, just from a commonality standpoint, so, and if you go to equipment, if you have 2 or 3 different brands or styles or types of equipment, they operate differently. Mm-hmm. So now you're into cross-training for different machines, and there's a safety component there because people aren't as familiar with stuff. It's hard to jump from one to the other. So from a fleet standpoint, you're best off to stay as common as possible. Mm-hmm. And our procurement policy right now, the way it reads, we have to get 3 quotes, 3 different manufacturers, and then you have to do this kind of dance to get through that process. Whereas the other way, you can just say, get me the best deal on a whatever brand of grader, and you're good. So,
Through the chair.
just a thought.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say that, yes, we will research and explore that and review the policy and have an update to council with those consideration in mind in our evaluation.
Councilor Dean?
Coming back to that policy, within an RFP or an RFQ, you can specify what you want quoted on. So, you know, you don't have to get 3 different manufacturers. You can go out and say, we want quotes on this.
We always, if you remember the grader purchases, we had a cat, a deer, and a Komatsu case.
But we don't have to do that, I'm saying. We can specify in our RFP or RFQ what we want quoted on.
So you're getting, I don't know, like, the way I've seen the administrative policy come before us, it's been that way, so.
Go ahead, Jeff.
So the chair to Councillor Dean, if you go to a public tender, you cannot specify a specific vendor. That's against procurement rules. There is in the RFQs, we typically lay out the requirements for the machine without specifying a brand. That way you don't trip any wires in procurement.
Councilor Wilhelm?
Through the chair to administration, I'm trying to find the section, I was just looking at it, but when the tender goes out and and administration's making their selection, there's both quantitative and qualitative decision-making doing there. So I mean, you guys can in that way put in the qualitative side, say, we prefer, maybe the case is the cheapest, but Deere is like the rest of our fleet, that should have a higher qualitative value on that tender process as well, I would imagine. Does that give you some wiggle room there?
Through the chair to Councillor Wilhelm, not exactly those wording, but there are other considerations we can take in. For example, how much O&M yearly costs for us. If you have different brands, then that increase the cost and increase your overall equipment owning cost, right? That becomes a factor. Whether our mechanics require additional training for a different machine, that you can factor in that way. However, in procurement evaluation, we try not to be subjective as in what I prefer. That's something we try to stay away from.
Any other questions, comments? Go ahead, Rod.
Through the chair to council, just the other thing we have to keep in mind, though, I think, is the North American free trade. So we have to have those categories within that procurement policy, which are by category, or by dollar value.
Right, but from my understanding, that if you go through Canoe, you can
Right.
say, I want this piece of equipment.
Yeah.
Get me the cheapest price on that exact piece of equipment. They do that whole dance for you, and it shows up, correct? So that alleviates all the council work, all the administrative jiggling that has to go on. I'm just trying to find an efficiency in it more than anything, so that's it.
Yeah, we certainly know the policy needs to be reviewed, because the 7,500 is, what do you buy for 7,500?
Get a tank of gas.
Yeah, it's just.
Any other questions, comments on this one? Councilor Wilhelm?
A motion that Government's Priority Committee accepts the Canoe procurement utilization for information.
Thank you, Councilor. With that, I'll call the question, all in favor?
In favor.
Thank you, Councilor. That one's moved. 7.3, Councilor attendance at events.
That's me.
You're up, Rod.
Well, I'm not Paul. So this one came up August 14th, and the resolution was to bring it to governance and priorities, and the discussion around whether or not we need a policy or how we want to deal with which events you go to, which events you maybe need council approval for, or whether you want to do anything with it. So that's why it's being brought forward here today.
Okay, so any discussion? Councilor Prestige?
Yes, the way it was till now was, if you're sitting on a board, you can go to any event for that board. If it didn't have anything to do with the board, then council had to give you the authority to go. For our training budget, that was, you've got your amount for your training, and we left it up to each individual counselor to decide which board he would, or which event he was gonna go on. That's what that policy was that came up. That way, because before, if you wanted to go to FCM, you had to get council's approval to go. Or like if you wanted to go to the carbon capture conference, you had to get council's approval to go. The way it is now, it's part of your education fund. So you do not have to get council's approval, because basically with the policy you have council's approval up to the $15,000 a year. So do we want to keep it that way, or you just want to, like, the event we're talking about? that should have been brought through council first before you went to it.
Councillor Wilhelm?
Through the chair to council, so, yeah, why don't we just get out on the table that what we're talking about is the groundbreaking for the Arts and Culture Center, and I can kind of see both sides of it. You know, I didn't know that the Reeve was going to it either. When I saw it in the paper, I was like, oh, we attended this. That was very surprising. And so to go back to a policy, I like our policy the way that it is. I think that in the end, we still have to have the belief in each other that we're going to do the best thing for council. I think that situation, you know, potentially the Reeve could have informed us beforehand he was going. It was last minute, and I think it came as a surprise to some people, and I can see why that led to where this discussion's at right now. So, because there was a public discussion about it as why we were attending it. Regardless, that could have been a discussion at council. It's in the past now and it's done. I don't believe we need a policy. I think that we can continue to move forward, believing that each of us are going to attend things for the best of the municipality. And in that situation, again, if you had asked me, I would have supported him going, but again, I didn't know what was happening. So I think that's where this conversation started, and if that's where the conversation needs to go, then we should have that conversation. But we can't change what happened in the past now. And I don't think a new policy is going to
Oh, we don't have
do
to
anything for it. Yeah.
If we just keep it the way it has been, is Dave should have come to council and said, I want to go to this, do I have council's permission to go?
We don't have that, it's not like that in the policy though.
That's the way we've done it for years. So that's what I'm saying.
I'm sorry, but respectfully, I have never seen council members come before and ask for permission to go to public events. That's Councilor Burrows?
So just, like I sit on a couple of different boards that have different representation, and when you go to events like this, you're representing the municipality, and you have to be, you have to make sure that the municipality is being represented, or the council and the municipality is being represented in the way you want it to, which sometimes becomes a council discussion. When I first got on, we had, and this is the problem, it was muddled up with the way that we had done attending of events, and council remuneration policy was kind of muddled up together. When we changed the remuneration policy, we never looked at how that would change the attendance at events. The idea of the training allowance is, if you want to go to a certain conference and learn something, you can get shot down by council sometimes, which was happening. And it was, curtailing the ability of some counselors to kind of learn a little bit more about something that they thought needed to come that way and report back on. So I'd like to keep that part of it. But when you get official invitations to attend as a municipality, like you're inviting Woodlands County or a representative of Woodlands County to attend an event on their behalf, that normally will come to council as an invite in the package. It used to be in the package, and then you'd decide which member of council was going to represent on their behalf, or if you were even going to send somebody. So, and maybe you remember that in the past, Councillor Dean doing that in the old council. But,
Yeah, like you say, that was because there was a financial implication.
right, but it was also about, who would go and who would represent and that kind of thing. So I think that's where the confusion came, is that the remuneration and the representation were together, and now we've split the remuneration, but we never dealt with the representation component of it in a council component.
Councilor Goodwin?
Yeah, I think that given that particular situation caused some of the public to be concerned about how we were. I just want to go back 2.5 years where I sat in this room and was basically told that it didn't matter what event that I went to. I was a counselor, and I had to have the council say that it's okay for me to be there. And, I did get a code of conduct letter. There was a number of letters that I know came in on this one. And I think the interesting part about it is that as individuals, we have to acknowledge that we expect the collective to be, whatever our collective decision is, to be acknowledged. And I know had been a lot of discussions about any of our attendance around that particular type of event. So my perspective of this is when I look in the mirror, I understood why you guys were concerned about it. There's no doubt about that. And when I was asked if I would do it again, which was a question I think was posed by one of the counselors, I said, yeah, in that particular situation, whatever I did, I would do again. It's just that I wouldn't get myself into that situation. And that's what's reflective of what happened here. I think that when you're in the leadership role that you've taken on, there's a real high level of responsibility. And I think it's stressful. I think it's, as a team leader, you should be more predisposed to listen to the concerns that we have rather than defending it. It's up to you to decide how you're going to, or what you would do about it. That's not up to me. Just like, and I respect the fact that you made that a question that you gave to me, was what would you do it again? And so I have not ever got myself into that situation again, even though those did present themselves. So in order to have a level of confidence that you're going to be the person that is the leader here, the team leader, I think you really need to not take offense when we say, hey, this is not acceptable, because I think as a person, I'm perfectly happy. I think you're a decent human being, but I think that in a leadership role, you have some challenges that are really, really difficult. And I respect that, but I think as well you should respect the individuals on this council and they're concerned about things.
Okay, back to the policy here. Are we, the RFD, we have direction on what do we want to do here? Do we want to have council attendance on events brought before for ratification from council ahead of time? Or Councilor Burrows?
I think if you're attending in an official capacity, then we'll have an invitation and there'll be that process. It's like that on every board that I sit on. And I think it adds a layer for us a little bit, but at least, we get to have the discussion ahead of time. So, and for the most part, when these things come up and they're simple, so-and-so is gonna go. And it also tends to fill in some of the gaps where we've been a little, and I don't wanna say, loose with it or whatever, but when there are official invites into the council, we know who's going and who's not going, and making sure that the county is represented. Or not represented, depending. So I would think it's fair to develop a policy if there's an official capacity to be representing the county, then yes, I think we need a policy for that, where it comes in on the invitations.
Councillor Williams, I seen you had your hand up there.
It would kind of graze over now where we were at, but, I guess, Councilor Burrows kind of covered it now.
Okay, so cognizant of time here, given where we are at the recommendation, says the Government and Priorities Committee direct administration to draft a policy for council attendance at events as discussed. Are we going to go with the recommendation or?
Sure.
Councillor Dean?
Yeah, I'd be prepared to move that the Governance and Priorities Committee directs administration to draft a policy for council attendance at events as discussed.
Okay, thank you. With that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, that one's passed. Brings us to number 8, adjournment. Councillor Wilhelm.
I'll motion to adjourn.
Thank you.